What's up, my royal priesthood? It's your girl, Priestess. Here's another episode of Conversations with the Priestess. And we're here again reading some revenge stories from Reddit. If you have any Reddit stories that you would like for me to read, please comment below. And don't forget to like, comment, and share. Let's go ahead, hit the intro, and we'll jump into these Reddit stories. What's up, my royal priesthood? It's your girl, Priestess. So here's the first Reddit story. Oh, I played the long game in the pro revenge Reddit. I am by no means an expert or pro at revenge, but I am a patient person. I disclosed this to a friend and they directed me here. Throwaway for obvious reasons. It's a long read, but the setup and backstory are important. Let me go ahead and take a sip of water because I feel like this is going to be juicy. 7 years ago, I was lucky enough to be able to buy my own place. I had saved for 10 years, worked my butt off, and I was so happy to be able to have a place to call my own. Now, being a single person on the mortgage meant I had to make compromises. One such compromise was buying a property on a shared block, a lot cheaper. Where I'm from, this usually means it's on a strata title. For some, that's a bonus as it means there's a communal fund for repairs. Typically, insurance is cheaper as it's collective, and other things like maintenance being taken care of. Strata titles also come with a lot of bylaws and restrictions on what you can and can't do. I'm pretty much private and introverted person, so having to deal with people and have limits on how to live was a no-no. I get it. I'm an introvert as well, and I like my freedom to do what I want to do, and I like having my own space. I took my time, found the perfect property, shared block, but freehold title. Only thing that was needed was to pay public liability insurance for the shared walkway on the property, split equally between owners. The real estate agent is local to my area. There's also about 3 degrees of separation between us. He has friends who are friends with my friends, type of thing. Didn't know him but knew of him, so that sort of thing felt good too. About 5 months after I move in, I get a knock on the door from the owner, landlord of the property next to me to discuss insurance. Not a problem. I ask for a copy of the policy so I have a record. It gets sent through, and lo and behold, it's for strata insurance. I was incredibly confused, and after much back and forth, the property isn't a freehold title, but a strata title. I called my lawyer who conveyed the title, etc. He was dumbfounded, but overall did the right thing and made things as right as they could. I arranged for a meeting with the real estate agent. I bought emails and printouts of the ads they had, all saying it was freehold. Emails between the real estate agent and my lawyer discussing his freehold status, despite it being in absolute black and white. He refused to accept any fault or offer anything to make things right. I don't begrudge that. He's looking out for himself. I get that. However, I wouldn't forget it. I did enter into mediation with the real estate agent, and all I asked for was when the time came for me to sell, they'd do it or cover the cost. I thought this was reasonable, but they flat out refused and offered me 1,000 to go away, which I refused. I had the option to pursue them legally and was advised by the mediator to do so, but ultimately I decided against it for a few reasons. The main one being my health at the time. So I planned and plotted. I schemed and connived as to how to get back at the son of a gun, and I settled on this. So the other property owner is trying to really scam this man out of money and trying to just pull a overreach just because he can. And what he's doing is making no sense at all. Let's see how this revenge works out. I found his personal Facebook page, which wasn't set to private. Saw some photos of a boys on tour trip he went on a few weeks prior. So about 5 to 6 months later, after I bought the property, I also found his address through a business registration search. On the anniversary of the sale, For 6 years straight, I sent them flowers with a note. Dear real estate agent, remembering you on this, our special day. She has your eyes. Love, L. They varied over so slightly over the years, but always had this on this, our special day, in some weird reference to a love child and a desire to reconnect. I also, from time to time, arrange for postcards and letters to be sent from another country. The one he has on tour and always signed Love, L. I learned about 3 weeks ago that this guy had recently divorced and lost his home, is no longer working as a real estate agent. His wife had found out he cheated on her. The story I was told, said friends of friends, went along the lines of he would get weird gifts and flowers every year, same day every year. She, his wife, finally put two and two together and realized that what the date was, and he admitted to cheating on her. Now, I didn't mean for this, but it turns out a year before I bought my house, he had gone on a holiday and came back with a little something, something and gave it to his wife, but somehow convinced her that it wasn't him. As much our special day turned out to be right around the time he'd have the gall deep. Oh gosh, let me reread that. Turns out he had the right, that was right around the time he had been deep without protection in someone who wasn't his wife only 1 year earlier. He's apparently lost his house, half his retirement savings, and also his business. I do feel a little bit guilty about all of it sometimes, but then I'm reminded that he's a scumbag, that karma, like me, is a patient, spiteful, and vengeful diva. That was a good one. That was a good one. And it turns out it was the real estate agent that was trying to con this person out of their money. Why would you do somebody like that? Like, for real? But hey, do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. So, you know what? Sometimes the best revenge is just cold and calculated. So, you know what? Good job. Good job. Let's go over to this next story. So, this one is also from Pro Revenge. Phone calls for the previous owner who turned out to be my crappy manager. This one is going to be good. Mobile phones became common in my country around 2004, just as I finished high school. My parents bought me my first phone, and it was a secondhand Nokia. It was bulky and basic, but I promised that someday I'd buy a new phone with my own money. When college started, I had a 2 hour daily commute. In high school, I had excelled academically and won several district level awards. These awards were being distributed during my first year of college. One nationalized bank award finally gave me enough money for a new phone. I bought a Sony Ericsson K300i and a premium SIM card, not realizing it had been abandoned by its previous owner. So when you get a new device, sometimes you'll get phone calls from the previous owner, and I've had that happen before, and that's not pleasant at all. By the third day, I started receiving calls for a guy named Bitsa from various financial institutions. It turned out the number had previously belonged to him, and for 20 years I had been getting these calls. Determined to keep my premium number, I began a routine of blocking wrong numbers. Back then, blocking was device specific, so each time I got a new phone, I had to start over keeping a list of numbers to block. I got my first job after graduating in 2009. Around 2010, I was assigned to a new project with a notorious reputation for burning people out due to a nefarious project manager named Bits. I didn't know his full name for quite a while. He took pride in making our lives a living nightmare. Bits ruled with an iron fist. From the moment his team stepped into the office, they were met with a barrage of emails, messages, each more urgent than the last. Bits thrived on creating chaos, often changing project deadlines on a whim, demanding his team work late into the night and through weekends. Bits' presence loomed over every task. He insisted on micromanaging every detail, yet was quick to take credit for any successes. No matter how small, failures, however, were met with his notorious tirades, publicly berating his team and assigning blame without hesitation. His unpredictable temper kept everyone on edge, afraid to make the slightest mistake. So he's one of those micromanaging bosses and one of those people that's always got to gripe and complain and make themselves look better than what they really are when they're really trash. Meetings were another tool in his arsenal of torment. He scheduled them during lunch breaks and after hours, ensuring no one could escape his grasp. These meetings were often pointless, serving only to reinforce his dominance and disrupt any semblance of work-life balance his team might have had. His relentless stream of emails continued around the clock, each carrying a thinly veiled threat: perfection or dismissal. Under his reign, morale plummeted and burnout soared. Yet Bitch remained oblivious, satisfied by only his complete and total control. I was quite ashamed when I learned that he was from the same area I was and had gone to the same school, though years before me. In 2012, our company merged with a parent company. Almost nothing changed personnel-wise, but infrastructure-wise, we got MS Outlook and an organization view. That was when I first learned about BITS from an organizational hierarchy perspective. His full name was an eye-opener. It was Bitsa. Now, the name was common enough, but at the time, mobile numbers had an area-specific pattern. So I already knew that the previous owner of my number was from the same area as me. Still, it could be someone else. I wanted to dig deeper. I talked with an old mentor who lived in the same area and had coached several high school students for the last 2 decades. He confirmed my suspicions. I won't go into the details, but it was evident that Bitsa and Bits were the same person. I had been quite peeved with this unknown person named Bitsfer for almost a decade by then, and Bits had been the bane of my and several others' existence for quite some time. This is where the revenge lies. First, I unblocked all the numbers in my phone. I was getting 5 to 6 calls daily on average, but after unblocking about 150 numbers, it increased to 15 to 18. My answering strategy changed drastically. Instead of saying wrong number, I politely explained that the owner had changed his number and provided his current number to update their database. This is where I could be the a-hole. I also volunteered the manager's number, in case he tries something else. Hot diggity dog it. That is some of the best revenge I've ever heard of. I like this. Keep it up. Keep it up. The fallout was epic. These people had been trying to find him for almost a decade. Banks had sold his debts to companies that harassed people for a living to get their money. It turned out he had been taking loans in everyone else's names, his wife, parents, uncles, aunts, and giving everyone that same number. He was evading credit card debt and loans of upwards of $200,000, equivalent in USD, but that's a crapload of money where we are from. Apparently, he had almost 20 cases filed against him, but no one could find him, probably why he thought he could walk on water. There are multiple versions of what happened at the office when his manager started to get calls about him. He was let go about 2 months later. Haven't heard from him since. So it turns out the guy that owned the number previous to the OP owed a whole bunch of people money and never updated his information. But it turns out this guy ended up being this guy's boss and was a butthole. So as a result, the guy gave the financial companies looking for him his new number, which ended up the guy was a con artist and scam artist, and boom, he lost his job. Ain't that something? I tell people, you better watch how you treat people on these jobs because you never know what information they might have on you. I'm going to take a quick break and refresh myself. Here are some church announcements, and we'll be right back. Hey, what's up, my royal priesthood? Thank you for watching and subscribing to Conversations with the Priestess. Thank you for supporting your girl, the Priestess. Now listen, I have bonus content available. However, I will be deleting my Patreon on March 31st, and I've migrated everything over to my Fansly account, which the username or handle for that is Merlin Mystique. I do have specifically Conversations with the Priestess tiers. I have the Royal Priesthood 1 tier for $8.99 that includes my bonus content here. The Royal Priesthood 2 is for $9.99. That includes my naturist content. and the regular bonus content. And I have the Royal Priesthood 3, $10.99 for the all-inclusive package, where you get Merlin Mystique content, podcast bonus content, and my naturist content. So I have those packages so that you can just get the content that you want without any extra hullabaloo. So without further ado, let's jump back into the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. All right, let's get into the show. Welcome back. Let's get back into these Reddit stories in Pro Revenge. Neighbor was stealing water from my supply, so I ruined him. This is going to be a good one. I live in Asia and just purchased a new house. Now, the previous owners were family friends who needed cash urgently and have been living in my country for nearly 3 years. So I got it for a great price in the middle of the capital city. The sale was finalized at the start of this month, and I moved in right after. The house was definitely a fixer-upper, as the previous owners had left mid-renovation, and the main door was locked with just a padlock, not even a door lock. The house had no gate, meaning anyone could just walk right on in. The first day I moved in, someone's bike was parked in the garage. I just parked it on the road on the same day I had a gate installed. An angry man was knocking on my gate later and didn't bother answering, but through my window I could see him giving up and taking the bike after 15 minutes. So already I wasn't digging the neighborhood, but I didn't have any incidents after that, aside from people not knowing that this was no longer an abandoned house. So my gate was blocked more often than never, but a no parking sign on my gate fixed that issue. Last week, I was having a shower in my bathroom, and I noticed my water pressure was lower than usual. I also heard my next door neighbor's water pump going. Now, this neighbor, an old guy, lived in a 3-storied house, the first being the lowest and the one he lived in. The other 2 floors were rented out to tenants. This guy wasn't happy about the house being sold and voiced many concerns to my friends, the previous owners. He was super angry about it, and my friends did warn me, but I'm a 6-foot guy with 3 dogs. No way he was doing anything, and yep, he didn't. So with this living situation, a water pump is needed to pump water to the tanks on the roof, since the public supply's pressure is not enough to get it up 3 stories. Now, I heard the water pump going immediately was suspicious. Sure, coincidences exist, but it wouldn't hurt to check it out. I waited till his pump turned off and then turned on different taps in the house. Sure enough, the pressure was back to normal. This made me even more suspicious, but if he was stealing water, it also made sense. The water bills had been going up and over through the years. This house wasn't lived in, but the house had also had water leaks. So it was chalked up to that. Even if the bills were too high to be caused just by leaks, now it's starting to make sense. At some point in the last 3 years, this old miser thought he'd save the cost of paying for water and waltzed into the property and is siphoning water from my lines. I couldn't find where exactly he was siphoning water from, but after checking my pressure multiple times, I was pretty sure. So I sat on it for a few days, thinking if I could confront him, go the legal path, or just let it be. Now, water in my country is very cheap. My total bill, even with washing 3 animals, a car every week, and water in my garden, only costs like $5 per month, even with the neighbor also stealing some of it. But it wasn't about how much I was paying or who was paying for it. It's about entitled old people who think they are deserving of using other people's resources without paying for it, and then getting away with it. It didn't sit right. It didn't sit right with me. I really wanted to teach him a lesson. What I did was really simple. I just turned off my water from the mains. I wouldn't have to break into his property, nor would I be breaking any laws. It was the best way of getting back at him without needing to even lift a muscle. Sometimes you have to get quiet revenge. So on Monday, just 4 days ago, I waited till the pump flicked on and turned off the supply. Now, the way household tanks works in my country is that there's a ball valve in the tank which detects the level of water and turns on the pump. If the level doesn't increase, the valve stays open, which electronically sends a signal to the pump to stay on until the level gets to a point at which the valve closes and also shuts off the pump. However, the level wasn't increasing, and anyone knows that starving a pump of water isn't a good idea. This was this way my expectation was that I'd burn out his pump and cause issues with his tenants. What I didn't account for is that his pump constantly running, would mess up the fuses by constantly drawing power overnight and absolutely destroy his wiring. If he decided to upgrade his household wiring to a more modern standard, this would have been prevented. This house clearly still had 90s era wiring, and I know that is some old wiring. Dang, that was 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago. At around 3 a.m., I heard all residents in the house waking up and talking in hushed voices about why their house in the neighborhood doesn't have power or water. I found out about the power part because the tenants devolved into shouting at their landlord. Our tenant protection laws are very important, and power and water are classed as essential on a state level. Cutting those services are grounds for lawsuits unless due to weather or some other unavoidable reason. In this case, the landlord is responsible for keeping the house wiring up to date and in good condition, alongside the supply of water, so the tenants were not happy, and one of them immediately moved out 2 days later when it was informed that water and power would not be returning the very same day this happened. Both tenants in the two floors lodged a complaint with the police, and if a person is in clear breach of laws, the police have the authority to fine or penalize the person without a court judgment. It can be challenged in court if the person thinks they were unfairly penalized, but they still have to pay the fines and only be refunded if and when the court finds the fines unlawful. So now the landlord lost both tenants and has to pay a fine of $500, which is a lot of money in our country. He also has to refund the security deposits of both tenants and cannot rent out until both issues are fixed, which will cost him more money. As of right now, he's moving out on Sunday to his daughter's place since he can't afford to live alone. The tenants were his only source of income, and he's a retired mechanic, so he has no other income. He did find out why the motor kept drawing power, overloaded the wiring, and burnt out. He came by my gate to ask me if I turned off my water, and I said, "Oh, yeah, my tank had a new leak on a pipe, and I turned it off till the next day until the plumber came by to fix the issue." Y'all, the look on his face, he kept a straight one, but just know he was holding back. He just said, "Oh, okay," and went back inside. Not sure if he knows I know, but I don't care because he can't do anything. I'm getting a plumber down next week to correct my plumbing and remove any pipes that leave my property. So I got rid of my water issue and a neighbor who could potentially be a pain in the rear by simply flicking a tap off. Two birds, one stone, I say. That was a good revenge story. That's what happens when you try to use somebody else's property for your own gain. And that man had tenants. And look at the tenants finding out how sloppy of a landlord he is. These are the revenge stories. Y'all, this has been a fun and rated time. Y'all don't forget to click like, share, subscribe, live, love, and be free. Smooches.